Lily stood near the corner of the restaurant, holding a tray close to her chest. Her eyes scanned the room, filled with rich guests in shiny clothes, laughing and clinking glasses. The air smelled like expensive wine and creamy sauces, mixed with strong perfume. She had been working here for almost a year, and no matter how hard she tried, no one ever really noticed her. To most people here, she was just another server, someone who brought food, cleaned up plates, and stood silently. In the background, it was a big night. The hotel was hosting a charity dinner in its grand ballroom. There were fairy lights hanging from the ceiling, a red carpet at the entrance, and a beautiful black piano sitting on the stage. A few famous guests were invited. Some were rich businessmen, some were artists, and others were well-known faces from magazines. There were waiters in black uniforms moving around quickly, carrying trays of sparkling drinks and tiny snacks. Lily was one of them, moving carefully between tables, trying not to bump into anyone. She'd been given the job of serving the center tables, where the most important guests were seated. Her manager, Mr. Crane, a strict man with a short temper, had told her to be extra careful tonight. That usually meant smiling politely, even when someone was rude, and never answering back no matter what. Lily walked up to a tall man in a gray suit, who looked like he owned half the city. His hair was slicked back, and he wore a gold watch that seemed to shine even in the dim light. Next to him sat a woman with too much lipstick and a small dog on her lap. Lily offered them glasses of red wine. The man didn't look at her when he took one. As she turned slightly to offer another glass, someone at the edge of her tray bumped it, maybe by accident. Maybe not. Suddenly the glass tilted, and the wine splashed across the gray-suited man's shirt. Red liquid spread quickly across the expensive fabric. The man jumped up, shouting loudly, "What is wrong with you?" he yelled, looking at Lily like she was trash. His voice echoed across the room, and everything went quiet for a few seconds. "So sorry," Lily said quickly, trying to offer a napkin. "Someone hit the tray, don't lie to me," he shouted again. "You did this. Are you blind?" Lily felt her throat tighten. Her face turned red with embarrassment. People at nearby tables were now staring. Some were whispering. A few chuckled. The man kept yelling, wiping his shirt in anger. The lady with the dog looked at Lily with disgust, like she had stepped in something dirty. Mr. Crane rushed over. "What happened here?" he asked, already looking angry. The man didn't give Lily a chance to speak. "Your staff are clumsy and careless," he snapped. "She spilled wine on me for no reason." I didn't mean to," Lily tried to say, but Mr. Crane cut her off. "Apologize to the guest." "Now," he said sharply. But it wasn't now, Lily. She looked down, her voice quiet. "I'm sorry, sir," the man scoffed, and Mr. Crane nodded as if the matter was settled. He then whispered to Lily harshly, "Get to the back. We'll talk about this later." Lily walked quickly toward the staff corridor, her heart pounding. Behind her, the noise of the party started again, laughter, music, more drinks being poured. But for her, everything felt frozen. Her cheeks were hot, her stomach was tight, and her eyes were already full of tears. She passed by the kitchen, ignoring the other workers who looked at her with a mix of pity and curiosity. She found herself standing behind the curtain near the stage, the only place that was quiet. The piano was just a few feet away, sitting like a silent friend. Lily leaned against the wall and wiped her tears. She wasn't usually so sensitive. But the way they had treated her, like she didn't matter, hurt deeply. People didn't know her story. They didn't know that before she wore this black uniform, she used to wear long dresses and perform on stage. They didn't know she used to play the piano in competitions and once won a national award when she was just 15. But all of that had stopped after her mother passed away in a car crash. Lily had been too heartbroken to continue playing. Music reminded her too much of her mother, so she stopped. The piano at home collected dust, and Lily, who had once played Mozart and Chopin with ease, now only touched piano keys in her dreams. She took the job as a server because she had to pay rent. It wasn't glamorous, but it was work. At least that's what she told herself. Still, on nights like this, when people looked at her like she was less than human, she wondered if life had just forgotten her. Behind the curtain, she listened. To the sounds of the party, someone gave a speech, and the audience clapped. Then, she heard someone talking about the next performer. A jazz musician was supposed to play 3 songs, but suddenly the voice stopped. There was confusion. Someone had canceled. Lily peeked out and saw the event manager talking to the hotel staff in a panic. Apparently, the musician's car had broken down, and he wasn't coming. The organizers were scrambling. One of the assistants said loudly, "We need anyone who can play even one song, just to fill the gap." Nobody stepped forward. The staff shook their heads. Some guests laughed nervously. Lily's heart began to beat faster. Her hands twitched. She looked at the piano again. Her body moved before her brain could stop it. "I can play," she said softly. The assistant looked at her. "What?" "Can play," Lily repeated, louder this time. "I know how." The woman stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or believe her. "You're a server." "Yes, but I've played piano all my life." The assistant hesitated. "Do you know anything? Elegant? Something classical?" Lily nodded. Behind her, Mr. Crane walked over. "What's going on here?" He barked. "She says she can play," the assistant said. "The pianist canceled. We need a filler." Crane laughed under his breath. "She play. That'll be a disaster." Lily stayed silent. "Well, unless you've got a better idea?" The assistant snapped at him. "She's the only one offering." Crane rolled his eyes. "Fine. But if she messes up, she's fired." The words hit her like a cold wind, but she nodded anyway. She had already been shamed once tonight. What else did she have to lose? The assistant told the audience there was a surprise performance by a guest. People clapped politely, waiting to see what kind of act was coming next. Most thought it would be a magic trick, or maybe a speech. When Lily walked onto the stage in her server uniform, there was a wave of confusion. Some people laughed. Others looked annoyed. Someone from the back whispered, "Is this part of the entertainment?" "She's the one who spilled the wine," another said, but Lily didn't hear them. She walked slowly to the piano, her fingers already trembling not from fear, but from something deeper. Her hands hadn't touched real piano keys in almost 3 years. She sat down and took a deep breath. Her fingers rested gently on the smooth ivory keys. She closed her eyes for a moment. In her mind, she saw her mother smiling from the audience, like she used to during Lily's childhood concerts. The room was still. Even the servers paused, and then Lily began to play. Lily sat at the piano, her fingers lightly resting on the keys. The room was filled with the sound of people talking, whispering, and even giggling. Many of them were not taking her seriously. After all, to them, she was just a waitress, someone who carried food and drinks, not someone who belonged on a stage. A few of the guests looked confused. Others looked annoyed, like this was a waste of their time. Some even took out their phones, maybe to record her failure and laugh about it later. But Lily didn't look at anyone. Her eyes were focused on the piano keys. Her heart was beating fast, not from fear, but from the feeling of being back in front of something she had once loved deeply. The grand piano reminded her of so many memories, good ones, painful ones, but all full of music. It had been years since she last played in front of people. She didn't know if she would be perfect. But in that moment, she didn't care what people thought. She was there to play, not to prove anything. She took a deep breath, and without another second of doubt, she began. The first few notes were soft, gentle, like a whisper in the air. The sound floated across the room, catching the attention of people who had been talking or looking at their phones. Her fingers moved slowly, then faster, building a rhythm that carried emotion, beauty, and something powerful. She had chosen a classical piece that wasn't just beautiful, it was difficult, deep, and emotional. It was the same piece she used to play with her mother sitting nearby, watching her during practice. Every note she played brought back the warmth of her mother's voice, the quiet support she had always given. As she played, something strange began to happen. The noise in the room slowly faded. People stopped talking. They stopped eating. One by one, heads turned toward the stage. Phones were lowered. Faces changed from confusion to interest, then to shock. Even the arrogant man who had yelled at her earlier sat quietly. wine glass in hand, staring in disbelief. Lily's fingers moved faster now, running up and down the keys with speed and grace. The music rose and fell like a wave, powerful yet gentle, pulling everyone in. Her eyes were closed, but her hands knew exactly where to go. She was lost in the music, but also fully in control. For the first time in years, she felt like herself, again, not a server, not a mistake, not a forgotten girl, but a pianist, an artist, someone who had something to give. People watched in silence. Some had tears in their eyes without even knowing. Why? The emotion in Lily's playing was so strong that it reached places inside them they hadn't visited in a long time. A woman in the front row gripped her husband's hand. A teenage boy who had been playing on his phone earlier now watched, with his mouth slightly open. Even the hotel manager, Mr. Crane, who had been ready to fire her if she failed, stood frozen near the back of the room. The song built to its peak, a storm of sound and speed, and then slowly began to calm. Her fingers softened again, playing. The final notes like a feather touching water. Then came the end. Simple, clear finish that left the room completely silent for a moment, and then came the applause. It started slowly, like people were too surprised to react. But it grew louder and louder until it became a wave of clapping, cheers, and even whistles. Some guests stood up. Others clapped with both hands over their heads. A few looked around, still shocked that the girl in the black server uniform had just played one of the most beautiful piano pieces they had ever heard in their lives. Lily opened her eyes and looked at the crowd. She was surprised too. She had expected judgment or laughter, maybe even cold silence. But instead, she saw something else: respect, admiration, amazement. She stood up slowly and bowed her head slightly. The lights felt warm on her face, but this time, the heat wasn't from shame. It was from pride, from peace, from knowing she had done something true to herself. As she walked off the stage, people reached out to her. Some asked her name. Others said things like "that was unbelievable," or "you should be a professional." The assistant who had helped her get on stage was smiling widely and clapping with the rest. Even Mr. Crane looked completely different, his mouth slightly open, as if he couldn't believe what he had just seen. Backstage, Lily leaned against the wall, her hand still shaking slightly, but this time from joy. A few staff members came, running up to her, excited and full of energy. One of the kitchen assistants said, "I had no idea you could do that. You should be famous." Another server hugged her and whispered, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Smiled shyly, feeling something in her chest that she hadn't felt in a long time. It was a mix of relief, happiness, and freedom. In the next hour, the story of her performance spread like wildfire. Guests began sharing videos of her playing on their social media. The hotel's name was tagged, and people started asking, "Who is she?" One person wrote, "A server at this fancy hotel just blew everyone away with a piano performance you have to see to believe." The video is already getting thousands of views. Lily didn't have time to check her phone. She was still floating somewhere between the real world and the world of music she had just entered again. She returned to the staff room to change out of her uniform, but before she could, one of the assistant managers came in and said, "You need to come back out. Some people want to meet you." Lily followed her back to the ballroom. A small group of guests was waiting for her, including a woman with short gray hair and a kind face. She stepped forward and introduced herself. "I'm Margaret Belton," the woman said. "I run a music foundation in the city. We support young talents, especially those who don't have chances to perform. I saw what you did tonight, and I must say was breathtaking." Lily didn't know what to say. She simply nodded, stunned. Margaret continued, "If you're interested, we'd love to talk more. I think you have something very rare, and I think the world needs to hear it." A man beside her added, "We were just saying this performance was better than half the concerts we've paid to attend this year." Lily smiled, still overwhelmed. She thanked them politely and promised to think about it, even as she stood there. Guests continued to come up to her. One of the older men, clearly rich and powerful, said, "I'll be honest, I judged you when you walked on stage. I thought it was a joke, but what you did? That was no joke. That was genius. Lily didn't know if she could call it genius, but hearing those words meant something. All those years she had spent hiding her talent, doubting herself, had almost made her forget who she was. But tonight had reminded her, music wasn't something she had lost. It was something that had been waiting for her all along. Later that night, when the event ended and guests started leaving, Lily walked quietly to the now empty stage. She sat down at the piano again, alone this time. She didn't play, just ran her fingers over the keys gently. The same piano that had once been a stranger to her had now become her friend again. She thought about her mother, how proud she would have been. She thought about how close she came to missing this moment, and she thought about what could come next. She didn't know the full answer yet, but one thing was clear. She was not just a server anymore. She had taken a chance. She had spoken. Up. And when the moment came, she had played her truth, and everyone had listened. Lily never expected her life to change in one evening. She had only wanted to hide after being embarrassed in front of so many people. But now, the same crowd that once laughed or ignored her was the one clapping and cheering for her. The piano. Performance had turned everything upside down, but in the best way possible. When she returned home that night, she was still in shock. Her small apartment looked exactly the same, plain white walls, a single chair, a small table, and the dusty keyboard in the corner. But something inside her had changed. She sat on the edge of her bed, still dressed in her server uniform, staring at her phone. Her hands were tired, but her mind was wide awake. Notifications lit up her screen nonstop. The video of her piano performance had gone viral. Someone had uploaded it with the title, "Waitress Shocks Rich Guests with Piano Talent." It had already been shared thousands of times. Comments poured in. "She's incredible. How is she not on stage already?" This made me cry. She's not just a server, she's a star. People from different parts of the country and even other countries were sharing her video. Music pages reposted it. News blogs started writing about the mysterious girl who stunned a high society crowd with her piano skills. Everyone wanted to know her story. Lily felt overwhelmed. Just a few hours ago, she was invisible to these people. They were calling her gifted, amazing, unforgettable. But more than the compliments, it was the music that mattered to her. For the first time in years, she had played from the heart, and people had felt it. That was the real magic. The next morning, the hotel was buzzing. Staff members talked about nothing else. Some were proud, some were jealous, but everyone was shocked. The hotel manager, Mr. Crane, called Lily to his office. She expected trouble, but to her surprise, he smiled when she walked in. "Lily," he said, clearing his throat, "I owe you an apology." She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "I misjudged you, that performance last night." "It was something special," he said. "The guests were very impressed. Some of them even asked if you could play again at our next event." Lily nodded quietly. "I also want to offer you something," he added. "A promotion. We can give you a permanent spot as a hotel entertainer. You'll play piano during dinner hours. Guests would love it." Lily paused for a moment. The offer was kind, but she wasn't sure. Music meant more to her than background entertainment. Still, she smiled and said, "Thank you. I'll think about it." As she left the office, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. When she answered, a woman's warm voice said, "Hello? Is this Lily?" "I'm Margaret Belton. We met briefly last night." "Yes, I remember," Lily replied. "I wasn't joking about my offer," Margaret said. "We run a music program that supports hidden talents. I've already shared your video with some people in the music industry. They're very interested in meeting you. Would you be willing to come by our studio this week?" Lily hesitated, then said yes. That call opened a door Lily never expected. Within days, she was meeting producers, music coaches, and artists who were all interested in her story. People were impressed not just by her talent, but by how humble and real she was. She wasn't someone who had grown up with luxury. She had worked hard, suffered, and still held on to her passion. One of the producers at the studio asked her, Why didn't you continue music before this? Lily told him about her mother, about how she stopped playing after losing her. The pain was too much back then. Every time she sat at the piano, she heard her mother's voice cheering her on. It made her cry. So she walked away from music and tried to survive in other ways. But now she felt ready, stronger. Her mother's memory no longer broke, hurt. Gave her strength. The producer smiled and said, "That's the kind of emotion people want to hear in music. Not just skill, but soul. And you have both." They invited her to record a few piano pieces in the studio. For the first time, Lily sat in front of a high-quality grand piano inside a soundproof room with microphones all around her. She was nervous at first, but once her fingers touched the keys, everything else disappeared. She played the same piece from the charity dinner, but this time, even deeper, fuller. When the recording ended, the sound engineer stood up and clapped. Outside the studio, her video kept growing online. Major news channels picked it up. TV reporters called her the mystery pianist. Talk shows wanted to interview her. Some famous musicians even posted her video with kind words. One said, "Real talent always finds a way, no matter where it hides." But with attention came pressure. People started asking personal questions. Some asked where she lived, how much she earned, what her family was like. Others criticized the hotel for not recognizing her talent earlier. A few even accused the rich guests of only clapping because they were embarrassed. Lily tried to stay calm through it all. She didn't want drama. She only wanted to keep playing music. Meanwhile, the hotel where she worked also began to change its tune. They made posters showing Lily at the piano, invited her to play again in the ballroom, this time as a featured guest. Mr. Crane, who once threatened to fire her, now introduced her proudly to important guests as our very own star. During one of these performances, something surprising happened. The same man who had spilled wine on himself and shouted at her showed up. He stood near the back, alone. After the performance ended, he walked up to her. "Lily," he said, not very loudly. She looked at him, unsure what to expect. "I came to say I'm sorry," he said. "What I did that night, was wrong. I judged you without knowing anything, and I'm ashamed of that." Lily looked at him quietly. Then she nodded and said, "Thank you." It wasn't easy to forgive, but hearing an apology from someone like him showed that something bigger was happening. Her music had not only touched people, it changed them. Days turned into weeks. Offers came from music schools and small record labels. But one offer stood out. A respected music academy in New York had seen her video and wanted to offer her a full scholarship to study there. It said, "Lily, your gift is rare. Your story moved us. We would be honored to help you grow it further." She held the letter tightly, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She had once dreamed of studying at such a place when she was young. But after losing her mother, life had taken a different path. Now, suddenly, the path was open again. Her old dream was knocking at the door, waiting for her to say yes. She called Margaret and asked for advice. Margaret said, "Ellie, you've given people hope. Yeah. You've shown that talent can be found in the most unexpected places. But you also deserve to grow. Don't be afraid of the next step. You ready?" And Lily knew it was true. On her last night at the hotel, the staff threw her a small goodbye party. There were flowers, snacks, and a chocolate cake with the words, "To our star pianist." Some coworkers hugged her. Few even cried. Mr. Crane, trying to hide his emotions, gave her a firm handshake. "You've made us proud," he said. She gave one final performance that night at the ballroom. Guests gathered not just to hear music, but to say goodbye. As she played, Lily felt completely free. Every note told her story, from pain to strength, from silence to song. When she finished, she stood and looked at the audience. Then she said into the microphone, "I want to thank everyone here not just for clapping tonight, but for listening. We all carry something inside us. Sometimes people don't see it right away, but that doesn't mean it's not there. Keep believing in what you love." The room went silent. Then applause filled the air again, louder than ever. Lily packed her things that weekend and moved to New York. Her journey had only begun, but the fire inside her was strong now. She knew there would be more challenges ahead. But this time, she wouldn't run from them. She would play through them. She was no longer just the shamed server who spilled wine. She was the girl who turned pain into music. The world was ready to hear her. Lily stepped off the train in New York City with a small suitcase in one hand and a heart full of nervous excitement. The streets were louder, faster, and more crowded than she had imagined, but she didn't mind. It felt like the right place to be. She looked up at the tall buildings, the shining lights, and the rush of people all around her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel lost. She felt alive. She had come here with a purpose. The music academy that offered her a full scholarship was one of the most respected in the country. The idea of studying there still felt like a dream. Back when she was a teenager, she had looked at pictures of the school online, thinking she would never be able to walk its halls. But now, because of one evening and one brave decision to step on stage, everything had changed. Her first day at the academy was both exciting and scary. Walked into the building with students who had been training for years, many of them from wealthy families. They wore designer clothes, talked confidently, and some even looked surprised when Lily introduced herself as the girl from the viral piano video. "Oh, you're that Lily?" one student said. "The server girl?" Lily gave a small smile and nodded. She knew some people didn't mean harm, they were just shocked. But others whispered behind her back, not out of kindness but jealousy. They had spent their whole lives practicing, hiring private teachers, and entering expensive competitions. And here was a girl who came from a restaurant job suddenly becoming famous overnight. At first, Lily felt out of place. She didn't have fancy clothes or a big background in music theory like the others. She struggled with some of the technical lessons. Her hands knew how to feel music, but she had forgotten some of the rules, the terms, the structure. She started thinking maybe she didn't belong here after all. But then, one of the teachers, a kind woman named Professor Alina, called her in after class. She looked at Lily and said, "You play with emotion, with heart. It can't be taught. In any textbook, you may need to catch up on the technical parts, but your gift is real. Don't let anyone here make you forget that." Those words stayed with her. Every morning, Lily woke up early and stayed late at the academy. She practiced harder than anyone. While other students went out to parties or events, she stayed back in the practice rooms, fingers flying across the keys, working on her speed, her accuracy, her reading skills. She didn't want to just be a girl who got lucky. She wanted to be worthy of the stage. Her teachers began to notice. Even the students who once looked down on her began watching her with quiet respect. One day, a student named Michael, who had been cold to her at first, knocked on her practice room door. "You were playing Chopin, right?" he asked. "Yes," Lily replied. "You made it sound like a story, not just a song," he said. "Struggle with that part." Lily smiled. For the first time, someone wasn't just impressed with her fame, but with how she played. Soon, she started helping others with emotional interpretation, while they helped her with theory. Made friends. She was no longer just the server girl. She was Lily, the pianist. Outside the academy, her story continued to grow. More interviews came. Magazines wrote about her rise from waitress to rising star. She was invited to play on television shows, and her social media following exploded. People loved her not just because she was talented, but because she was real. She didn't hide her past. She talked openly about her mother, about working at the hotel, about the fear and sadness she once carried. Many people reached out to her with their own stories. A young man wrote, "I work at a gas station, but I love painting. Watching your video gave me the courage to start again." A girl from a small town said, "I want to play violin, but my parents can't afford lessons. Your story gives me hope." Lily replied to as many messages as she could. She didn't want to forget where she came from. Fame wasn't her goal, music was. And now, music was leading her to places she had never even dreamed of. One day, while practicing at the academy, she received a call from Margaret, the woman who had helped her get here. Lily, Margaret said, I have some exciting news. There's a global music festival next month in Paris. They want you to perform me, Lily asked, shocked. In Paris? Yes, Margaret replied. The same people who watched your video online reached out. They want your performance. To be the opening act, it's a huge opportunity. Lily's hands shook as she held the phone. She had never been outside the country before. Her passport was new. But she said yes. She had come this far and she wasn't stopping now, preparing for the Paris. Performance became the most important thing in her life. She chose a new piece, a bold, emotional one that told a story of struggle, hope, and finding light after darkness. Every time she practiced, she imagined standing in front of thousands of people, telling them her story through the keys. The day she flew to Paris felt surreal. She sat by the airplane window, staring at the clouds, thinking about everything that had brought her here. Her mother's lessons, the pain of losing her, the long hours at the restaurant, the spilled wine, the stage, the applause. It all felt like a movie. But it was her real life. In Paris, she stayed at a hotel near the performance hall. The building was huge with high ceilings and golden lights. The piano on the stage was a rare Steinway, perfectly tuned, shining under the spotlight. Lily touched the keys with gentle fingers, remembering the first time she had played in front of a crowd after years of silence. On the night of the concert, the hall was packed. People from all over the world had come to watch. Lily waited backstage, dressed in a simple black dress, her heart beating fast. The host introduced her as a story of surprise, strength, and soul. The audience clapped politely, not knowing what to expect. Lily walked onto the stage, took a deep breath, and sat. At the piano, the hall fell silent. Then she began to play. The music was not just sound. It was emotion. It told the story of a girl who had been invisible, who had cried in dark rooms, who had almost given up. It told of a spark that never died, of courage. Found in the middle of shame, of a song that was always waiting inside her as her fingers moved. Tears filled some eyes in the audience. The music wrapped around them, soft and strong, full of life and memory. Lily didn't look up. She was in her world, pouring her soul into every note. When the final key echoed through the hall, there was silence. Then a slow clap, and louder. And louder, the audience rose to their feet. A standing ovation. Some people cheered. Others shouted her name. Lily stood, bowed with grace, and smiled. She didn't cry. Not this time. She felt calm, strong. She had done what she came to do. Backstage, reporters waited. Journalists asked for interviews. Famous musicians offered to collaborate. But more than anything, Lily was proud of herself. Not for the fame, but for not giving up on her gift. That night, she sat alone in her hotel room, looking out at the Eiffel Tower glowing in the distance. She thought of her mother. She whispered, I wish you were here to see this. Then, she smiled. Deep down, she believed her mother had always been watching. Over the next few weeks, offers came pouring in: concerts, sponsorships, collaborations. Lily's name was now known across the music world. She made one thing clear to everyone. I'm not here to be a star. I'm here to play. I'm here to feel. I'm here to tell stories through music. She also began using her platform to help others. She spoke at schools, supported programs for underprivileged kids, and started a small scholarship in her mother's name to help young musicians who couldn't afford lessons. She visited restaurants, talked to staff members, and reminded them they mattered too. One evening, she returned quietly to the very hotel where it all began. No cameras, no crowd. She wore simple clothes and walked into the dining hall. The same piano was still there. She asked if she could play a song. The staff recognized her and nodded with joy. She sat down, played a gentle piece, and when she finished, she looked around the room. It was almost empty. But it didn't matter, because Lily knew she didn't need a big crowd to shine. Her light was already within her, and now it would never go out. Lily's name had now become a symbol of hope. People everywhere talked about her, not just because she played the piano so beautifully, but because of her story. A girl who once worked as a quiet server in a hotel, someone who was shamed in front of rich guests, had turned that moment into something powerful. She had not only played music, but changed how people looked at others like her, those working silently behind the scenes. Those with hidden dreams, those who just needed one chance. After the Paris concert, her world became bigger and faster. She was invited to play in countries she had never visited before. London, Tokyo, Rome, Sydney. Chase Place welcomed her with warmth and admiration. Her performances were always full. People didn't just come to listen to music, they came to feel something real. They knew Lily's music came from a place of pain, strength, and truth. That made it different. One day, while sitting in a quiet garden in Vienna after a concert, she received a message that touched her deeply. It was from a girl named Zara, who worked at a small bakery in a village. Zara wrote, "I used to think my life didn't matter. I cleaned floors and served bread all day. But after watching your video and reading about your story, I started painting again. You reminded me that even someone like me can create beauty." Lily read that message again and again. It reminded her of why she started playing again. Wasn't trying to become famous. She was trying to feel alive. And if her music helped even one person believe in themselves again, it was worth everything. Her concerts were now selling out months in advance. But Lily never let it change who she was. She still traveled with just a small team. She still replied to fans personally when she could. She still wore simple clothes and practiced every day, just like she had in the academy practice rooms. She often said, "Music saved me. I owe it everything. I'll never play just to impress. I'll always play to connect." People began calling her concerts healing journeys. There were no big lights or loud announcements, just a piano, a quiet stage, and a story in every note. One day, a famous record label offered her a big contract, millions of dollars, luxury tours, and media appearances. But the contract also came with rules. They wanted her to change her image, play more modern songs, and allow scripted interviews. Lily read the papers quietly, then politely said no. She said, "I didn't come this far to become someone. My story is not for sale." That answer made headlines. Some people thought she was foolish to turn down so much money, but most people respected her even more. She showed that staying true to yourself was more valuable than fame or riches. Later, Lily began working on her first album. It was called The Hidden Room. Each piece told a story from her life, the fear she felt while hiding behind the curtain at the hotel, the feeling of her mother's memory, the silence of her lonely nights, and the joy of finally being heard. She recorded some parts at night, when the world was quiet. She wanted the music to feel personal, like a secret shared with a friend. When the album came out, it touched hearts around the world. People wrote to her saying they listened to it during hard times while grieving, while healing, while chasing their own dreams. Lily smiled whenever she heard such stories, knew those people understood her music not just with their ears, but with their souls. Months later, she received a special invitation. A famous orchestra in New York wanted her to perform with them at a huge charity concert. The event was to raise money for underprivileged children who wanted to study music but couldn't afford instruments or classes. Ellie didn't just say yes, she offered to help create a program herself. She told the organizers, "I know what it feels like to be unheard. Let's create a place where young people can be seen and supported." The concert was magical. It was held in a grand theater. With golden lights and red velvet seats, the children who would benefit from the charity were seated in the front row, their eyes wide with wonder. Lily walked on stage in a simple white dress and smiled at them before sitting down at the piano. This time she played a new piece, one she had written especially for them. It was soft and full of hope. The music started slowly, like a small light in the dark, and grew stronger with every moment. The children listened closely, holding their breath. Some even had tears in their eyes. The piece ended with a quiet note that lingered in the air like a promise. When the last note faded, the room was silent for a second, then filled with thunderous applause. But more than the sound, it was the feeling that mattered. That night, Those children didn't just hear music, they felt seen. They knew someone understood them. They believed, maybe for the first time, that their dreams mattered too. After the concert, Lily stayed and met with many of them. She gave hugs, signed notebooks, and listened to their stories. One boy said he wanted to be a violinist. A girl said she had been playing piano on her grandmother's broken keyboard. Another child gave her a small drawing of a girl at a piano with stars around her. Lily kept that drawing in her travel bag after that. Inspired by these moments, Lily decided to create a new project. She started an organization called The Quiet Ones. It helped find and support talented kids from poor or forgotten places, people who had been ignored like she once was. She raised funds, donated instruments, and set up small music schools in areas that had none. She visited them often, not just as a guest, but as a mentor. Years passed, but her love for music never faded. Her concerts continued to sell out. She wrote more original pieces, blending classical sounds with the emotions of everyday life. People called her the pianist who plays feelings. Through it all, she stayed grounded. She never forgot the moment. That had started it all, the moment she had been humiliated at the hotel, then walked onto a stage in fear and let her heart speak through the piano. To honor that turning point, she created a concert series called From the Back Room to the Stage. The idea was to invite people from different low-paying job servers, cleaners, delivery drivers, street performers who had hidden talents. She gave them a chance to perform in real concert halls. Some sang, some played, some read poetry. Every show was emotional, powerful, and full of surprises. She always told them before they went on stage, "You're not invisible. You never were." And so, Lily didn't just play music, she made a movement. A reminder that greatness can come from anywhere, that people shouldn't be judged by what they wear or where they work. Her music had become more than sound. It had become a voice for the silent, a hand for the fallen, a light for the lost. One evening, years after her first performance, she returned again to the hotel where everything had begun. She asked if she could sit at the same piano. The staff had changed, but one older worker recognized her. "You're the girl from that night," he said with a smile. Lily smiled back. "I still am." She sat down, placed her fingers on the keys and played the same piece she had played that night. But now she played it slower, softer, with more warmth. She didn't need applause. She didn't need a crowd. She was simply telling the piano and herself, "Thank you." When she finished, the room was quiet. A few guests clapped politely, not knowing who she was, and that was fine, because Lily no longer needed recognition to feel whole. Her journey had taught her something greater, that true music comes not from trying to impress, but from being honest. As she walked out of the hotel, she passed a young server who looked nervous, holding a tray too tightly. Lily smiled at her and said gently, "You're going to be more than they expect. Don't forget that." She stepped outside into the night, where the stars shone quietly above, like tiny lights clapping just for her. And that was how the shamed server became the soul of a generation, not by shouting for attention, by playing truthfully, by lifting others, and by never letting the music inside her fade.